Hi, I have a math toolbox here with 18 different items in it that can be used to do math activities both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. So I'm going to take a few minutes to walk us through what I have in my box. And I have some lovely assistants that are going to help demonstrate how to do some of these activities with us. So the first thing in my math toolbox is a deck of cards, and there are so many activities that you can do with a deck of cards. And in this deck I've removed all of the face cards and the aces, so I only have number cards in here, and there are so many activities that we can do with this deck of cards. One thing that we can do is draw two cards and add them, or draw two cards and subtract them, or children can play war, looking at greater than, less than, or they could hold a number up to their head and other students can give them clues as to what it is, and they can guess their number. That's what I'm going to have some of our helpers do today. Elena, would you draw a card and put it up on your forehead? Can you girls give Elena some clues about the number on her forehead?
I have one.
What's that?
You're an even number.
Okay, she's an even number.
Oh. She has 8 hearts.
She has 8 hearts on her. Can you tell her maybe something plus something equals her number, or it's just before?
4 plus 4 equals that. Am I 8?
Is she 8?
Yes.
Ah, very good.
Good luck.
Today I have Clara and Lily here with me, and they're going to help demonstrate how playing war can help us with greater than, less than comparisons.
7 is greater than 5. 10 is greater than 7. 9 is greater than 8. 7 is greater than 4.
Great job. Thank you, ladies. Other items in my toolbox, I have some number cubes or dice, and we can use those to roll 2 of them and add the numbers together. 4 plus 2 is 6. Or you could roll 1 and say if it's an even or odd number, 1 is odd. Or we could work with probability and roll a dice a certain amount of times and record how many times each number shows up, or say out of 50 rolls, how many times do you get a 6? And you could work on probability that way. I also have a tape measure, and we could use a tape measure both in or out of the classroom to measure the distance between 2 objects, or measure 2 children and see how tall they are and compare their height. Lots of different things we can do with a tape measure. Things on the playground we can use it for. A lot of math questions come up at recess, and it's amazing how much learning you can do all over the place. I also have a ball of yarn and a scissors for sometimes when you don't have a tape measure, or a tape measure won't work to measure something. We can do measuring using a ball of yarn and a scissors. Again, on the playground, maybe we want to know how big around a tree is at the bottom compared to up higher. We could use some yarn to wrap around the bottom of the tree and cut it off, and then wrap it around up higher and cut it off, and compare the lengths to show how big around that tree is, or comparing how big around different trees are, which one's bigger, which one has a bigger trunk than the other ones. So we could use that. I have a package of loom bands. These are used normally to make bracelets or make little characters out of them. But I have a bunch of them that we can use in sorting activities. The kids could sort them by colors, or counting activities, or things like that. I have a small bag of coins. We do a lot of counting money. Kids could sort the coins by the type of coin it is, or I could say in line, I could maybe even drop a few coins on the floor and, you know, say as you're walking along, you might pick up coins that you find and then count how much money you find. Oftentimes I'll ask my children, I'll say, dig in your couch cushions to find some coins and count the coins that you have. So we have some coins that we can use wherever we go. I have in my toolbox a couple of recipe cards, and I always think some of the best places to work with children in math is to have them cook with you, and it's a great place to introduce fractions when you're doing half cups, fourth cups, things like that, but also just looking at the recipes themselves and saying, like, here I have one for chocolate chip cookies, and we love to double our batches of chocolate chip cookies because that means more cookies. So we could look at the recipe together and say one batch makes 12 cookies. If we want to double it, how many cookies would we be making? So you can work with doubling and halving with a recipe card. And I also have some measuring spoons in my toolkit, and we could look at certain points of certain ingredients on the recipe card and ask which spoon would we use to measure that out. Or if we were doubling it, should we do two spoons, or is there another way that we can do that with using just one spoon, again doubling. Without the recipe cards, we could also use the measuring spoons also just to look at fractions. And for example, I have a 1/4 teaspoon here and a 1/2 teaspoon here, and I could show the students that and ask them which one is a bigger amount. Is 1/4 more or is 1/2 more? And so just using the language of fractions and being able to see the fractions in use. I have a package with several different star stickers. Each of these star stickers is a different size, and so the students could lay out the stickers in an order of greatest to least or least to greatest, ordering different sizes of star stickers. And this would work with any object that comes in several sizes. I have a Scholastic book order that I could give to my students. We could do this just with a small group of students or a whole class, give everybody one, and say that each one of them has $10 to spend. I have little tiny $10 bills here. Each one has $10 to spend, and ask them what they would order for $10, or we could make it a little competition, see who can order the most things and still stay under $10, and mix and match different book titles and amounts of money with that. Similar to that, I also have a takeout menu. This is a Chinese takeout menu, and we could do similar word problems that we could ask. Again, they could have a $10 limit for their meal, and they could choose an item on the menu to buy, and then saying, if we paid with a $10 bill, what would your change be? Or we could look at some comparisons on the menu and say, what's the price difference between getting the small or the large, or adding a soup, or different things like that. What can you get that stays under $10? So we can use a takeout menu for that. I have a package of muffin cups, and these can be used in several different ways. We could use these by, I could lay some muffin cups out in front of some students and have them filled already with a set number of maybe beans or Skittles or something, and just say, how many do we have all together? So we're working on multiplying. Or I could put a pile of something in front of them and ask them to divide them evenly in the cups, which would work on dividing. We could have used them earlier also with our loom bands as we were sorting. They could sort in the muffin cups. So they can be used in several different ways. I also have some pieces of plastic canvas that have been cut into hundreds, tens, and ones. And these are great to use for if you don't have base 10 blocks, or if you don't have base 10 blocks with you. And so you can do activities dealing with place value with tens, hundreds, tens, and ones. The ones are hard to get out. And so we can do place value things, or use them to manipulate a problem in addition or subtraction also. So that's how those can be used. I have 2 different sizes of paper clips of different colors, and the students can use these to create patterns, and they can link them together. So they can choose different colors for their patterns, or they could add 2 sizes in their pattern also, making it a little bit more complex of a pattern. I'm going to ask my assistants to help me with the next one. I have my assistants back to show how I can use just a regular paperback chapter book. So I'm going to ask Kaylee, who's in kindergarten, to find page 23. Can you find page 23 in my book? You got it. There's 23. Good job. I'm going to ask Elena, who's a first grader, can you find a page in here that has 2 even numbers, a 2-digit number, and they're both even?
Daddy.
What did you find? 22, and they're both even. Very good. I have Lily, who's a second grader, and I'm going to ask Lily to find a page number that has odd, even, odd numbers. 3-digit number, odd, even, odd.
Found one.
She found
121.
121, very good. Now I'm going to ask Clara, who's a third grader, to find a page number that has 100 and 3 tens and 6 ones. 100, 3 tens, and 6 ones.
Here you go.
There you go. What page did you find?
136.
Thank you, ladies. I also have a baggie of doll clothes. So I have 3 pairs of pants and 3 shirts. And what I could do with these is lay them out and ask my students how many different combinations, and it doesn't matter if they match, how many different combinations of outfits can I make using 3 pairs of pants and 3 shirts? And they can move them around and set them into different outfits and record their information on some paper or on a small whiteboard to come up with how many different outfits they can create. I also included a stopwatch in my toolbox, and we deal with learning how to tell time, but it's also important to understand the concept of time. So sometimes I'll ask my students to do a activity at their desk, whether it's running in place, or sometimes it's simply sitting still with their eyes closed so they can't see the clocks in the room, and ask them to do that activity for 1 minute and to see what 1 minute feels like. And then I start my timer, and then they either stop their activity or they raise their hand when they think that their 1 minute has gone by. And then we talk about how many seconds are in a minute and how long a minute feels. And sometimes a minute feels fast if it's doing an activity they enjoy, or sometimes the minute feels very long when they're just sitting at their desks with their eyes closed waiting for a minute. So the stopwatch helps me with that. We could also use the stopwatch outside at recess and have the children run races and compare their times, or do maybe an obstacle course outside and compare their times for that. So lots of options with the stopwatch also. My last item in my toolbox is a box of toothpicks and a little tube or a little tub of Play-Doh. And again, I'm going to have my assistants demonstrate what we can do with that. I have given my assistants the toothpicks, and I've given them each a little bit of Play-Doh, and they have been working hard at making shapes and figures. Over here we have Lily made a square, putting it together using the toothpicks and Play-Doh. And then we've also had some that built up from their square to make a cube. We have a triangular prism. And what we can do after they have created all of these, we can talk about how many sides each shape has, or how many vertices or how many faces they have, and it would be an easier way of counting those to actually have it in front of them to do that, instead of trying to count it on a piece of paper where it's drawn in 3D and try to count them all. So they're actually creating them, and then they can visually see more easily how many sides and vertices and faces each one has. So I think that the Math Toolbox is a great resource to use in any math classroom. A lot of these items can be used during my math meeting time in the morning, again with the counting of money and patterns with the paper clips, little probability activities with the dice. Those are all great things that work well in my math meeting. Introducing just math language through fractions, talking with the recipe cards and the measuring spoons. These are great things that I can do in my math meetings in the morning. And then one thing that I'm really looking forward to doing this year is using the toothpicks and Play-Doh when I teach my geometry unit. I'm really looking forward to using that with my students at that time. My plastic canvas pieces in tens, hundreds, and ones, I don't have base 10 blocks in my classroom, and so those would be a great tool to use as my students are working through addition and subtraction problems, especially when we get into regrouping and being able to manipulate that at their own desks, that they can each have their own set that I can cut and create for them. So there are so many tools in here that can be used throughout many different lessons that I teach throughout the year. So I'm happy to have my toolbox that I get to use in my math classes now.